The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Lincoln Street as Mrs. Eleanor Jenkins stood at the busy intersection, clutching her worn leather purse with trembling hands. At 82, she had lived in this city her entire life, but today nothing looked familiar. The bus stop where she had waited every Thursday for the past decade to visit her friend Mabel at the senior center had disappeared overnight, replaced by orange construction cones and a sign reading, "Route Detour." Eleanor's pale blue eyes scanned the unfamiliar street corner, searching for anything that might point her in the right direction. Her heart fluttered like a trapped bird in her chest as people rushed past, a blur of movement and color that made her dizzy. The world seemed to spin faster these days, leaving older folks like her struggling to keep up. "Excuse me," she attempted to say to a young woman in a business suit, but her voice came out as a whisper, easily swallowed by the city noise. The woman walked past without slowing, her eyes fixed on the phone in her hand, thumbs dancing across its screen. Eleanor tried again with a middle-aged man waiting for the crosswalk signal. "Sir, could you tell me where the number 16 bus stops now?" The man glanced at her, mumbled something about not knowing the bus routes, and quickly looked away when the light changed. Time passed. 10 minutes, 20, then 30, as Eleanor stood rooted to the spot, too afraid to wander and become more lost than she already was. Her arthritis was acting up, pain shooting through her knees after standing for so long. Her throat felt dry, her water bottle empty since noon. The temperature was dropping as clouds gathered overhead, threatening rain that Eleanor wasn't prepared for. She'd only planned to be out for 2 hours at most. "I should have listened to Lisa," she whispered to herself, thinking of her daughter who had suggested last month that perhaps it was time to stop these solo trips across town. "You're getting older, Mom," Lisa had said gently. Things change so quickly in the city now. But Eleanor had insisted on maintaining her independence. "I've been riding these buses since before you were born," she'd told her daughter proudly. Now as strangers streamed around her like water around a rock, Eleanor wondered if Lisa had been right after all. A group of teenagers passed, laughing loudly, their backpacks bouncing as they jostled each other. For a moment, Eleanor thought about asking them for help. Young people were supposed to know everything about phones and maps these days, but their boisterous energy intimidated her. They seemed to belong to a different world entirely. Eleanor watched as a mother hurried by, dragging a small child who was asking repeated questions. The woman looked stressed, checking her watch every few seconds. Another potential helper, gone before Eleanor could work up the courage to speak. "Just need to find the number 16, she repeated to herself like a mantra, running one hand over the aged wedding band she still wore 7 years after Harold's passing. What would he have done in this situation? Harold had always been her navigator, confidently guiding them through unfamiliar cities during their modest vacations. He would have marched right up to someone and asked for directions without a second thought. The memory of her late husband gave Eleanor a brief surge of determination. She took a deep breath and stepped directly into the path of a man in a delivery uniform. "Young man, I'm trying to get to the senior center on Maple Avenue. The bus stop has moved and Sorry, ma'am, running late on deliveries." He cut her off, sidestepping her with practiced ease. "Try checking your phone for the route." "I don't have one of those smartphones," she called after him, but he was already halfway down the block. Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced in many years, the hot sting of tears threatening to spill over. She blinked rapidly, determined not to cry in public. She was a grown woman, for heaven's sake, not a lost child. Though at this moment the distinction felt painfully thin. She watched as people flowed around her, most with that familiar distant look, the one that carefully avoided eye contact with strangers in need. Eleanor had seen that expression before, of course. She might have even worn it herself once or twice when confronted with someone else's problems that seemed too complicated, too time-consuming to solve. But being on the receiving end of that collective avoidance felt surprisingly painful, like a physical wound. Another 10 minutes passed. The first drops of rain began to fall, light sprinkles that dotted the sidewalk with dark circles. Eleanor opened her purse, searching for the small folding umbrella she usually carried, only to realize with dismay that she had left it on the kitchen counter that morning. Just as the sprinkles began to transform into a steady drizzle, Eleanor noticed a woman about her age taking shelter under the awning of a nearby coffee shop. Perhaps another senior would understand her predicament. With renewed hope, Eleanor carefully made her way toward the shop, mindful of the slick spots forming on the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she said to the woman, who was wrapping a scarf more tightly around her neck. "I'm trying to find where they've moved the number 16 bus stop. Do you happen to know?" The woman looked at Eleanor with kind eyes. "Oh dear, I wish I could help you. I don't take the bus. My son dropped me off for my coffee group. He'll be picking me up soon. Have you tried asking inside? The baristas might know." Eleanor peered through the coffee shop window. The place was packed with people, mostly young folks with laptops open in front of them, wearing headphones that shut out the world. The thought of navigating through the crowded space, of raising her voice to be heard over the espresso machines and background music, made her stomach tighten with anxiety. I'll try someone else. Thank you anyway," Eleanor said, stepping back into the increasing rain. Her coat was growing damp now, the chill seeping through to her bones. The corner where she stood offered no protection from the elements. In her mind, Eleanor could hear her daughter's voice again. "Mom, you can call me anytime you need help. That's what the emergency cell phone is for." The simple flip phone was indeed in her purse, charged as Lisa insisted it always be. But calling her daughter meant admitting defeat, confirming that she could no longer manage on her own. Besides, Lisa worked at the community college across town. By the time she could arrive, Eleanor would be soaked through. A city bus, not her number 16, but some other route, pulled up to a stop across the street. Eleanor watched longingly as passengers boarded and departed, everyone seeming to know exactly where they were going. She considered crossing over to ask the driver for information, but the traffic was moving too quickly, and her legs weren't as steady as they once were. By the time she worked up the courage to attempt it, the bus pulled away, leaving her watching its red taillights disappear down the wet street. The rain fell harder. Eleanor's white hair, which she had carefully styled that morning, now hung in damp strands around her face. Her glasses were spotted with raindrops, blurring her already compromised vision. She took them off to wipe them with a tissue from her purse, but the tissue quickly became too wet to be effective. "Oh, Harold," she whispered, allowing herself a rare moment of public vulnerability. "I don't know what to do." Just then, the electronic billboard across the street changed to show the time, 3:45 p.m. With a jolt, Eleanor realized she had been standing at this corner for nearly an hour. Mabel would be worried by now. The senior center closed at 5 hours, and their Thursday card game was a tradition neither woman had missed in years. A fresh wave of people surged past as a nearby office building apparently ended its workday. Eleanor tried once more, her voice a little louder with desperation. "Could someone please tell me where to find the number 16 bus?" A few faces turned her way, some with brief flickers of concern, others with the wary expression city dwellers often reserve for those who speak out in public spaces. But no one stopped. No one approached. They looked, perhaps felt a momentary pang of sympathy, and continued on their way, their own destinations pulling them forward. As Eleanor stood there, becoming smaller in her sodden coat, she felt a sensation she hadn't experienced since Harold died: complete invisibility. In a city of thousands, surrounded by people who could easily help her with a moment's guidance, she had somehow become unseen. The feeling hollowed her out from the inside, leaving nothing but a shell of the confident woman she had once been. The rain continued to fall, washing away her expectations of human kindness along with her carefully applied makeup. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, gathering what remained of her strength. Perhaps it was time to admit defeat, to call Lisa, to acknowledge that the world had indeed changed, and perhaps she needed to change with it. She opened her eyes, reaching for her purse to retrieve the emergency phone, when she noticed a figure approaching from the corner of her vision, a tall teenager with headphones draped around his neck and a gym bag slung over one shoulder. He was slowing down, looking directly at her with an expression of genuine concern, unlike the averted gazes she'd encountered all afternoon. The young man stopped completely now, standing just a few feet away. He hesitated for only a moment before speaking, his voice clear against the backdrop of rainfall and traffic. "Ma'am, are you okay? You look like you might need some help." Eleanor blinked raindrops from her eyelashes as she looked up at the young man standing before her. He was tall, at least 6 feet, with broad shoulders underneath a dark blue hoodie that was getting soaked in the rain. His gym bag had the local high school logo printed on the side, and despite the chill in the air, he wore only basketball shorts below his sweatshirt. What caught Eleanor's attention most, though, was the genuine concern in his eyes, warm brown eyes that actually saw her. "Yes," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "Yes, I do need help. I'm trying to get to the senior center on Maple Avenue, but they've moved my bus stop and I can't find where it's gone." The teenager nodded, immediately shrugging off his backpack and setting it down next to his gym bag. "The number 16, right? I heard you asking people." He pulled his phone from his pocket. "They've been doing construction all over this part of town. Let me check where they've moved the stops." Eleanor felt a rush of gratitude so powerful it nearly brought her to tears again. "Thank you, young man. I've been standing here for over an hour." The boy looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from concern to disbelief. "An hour in this rain?" He glanced around at the dozens of people still hurrying past them. "And nobody stopped to help?" Eleanor gave a small, resigned shrug. "People are busy these days." Something flickered across the young man's face, a mixture of disappointment and determination. Without hesitation, he unzipped his hoodie, revealing a basketball jersey underneath, and held the sweatshirt out toward Eleanor. "Here, please take this. You're soaked through." Eleanor shook her head, raising her hands in protest. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly. You'll catch cold yourself." "I'm fine, ma'am. I run hot and I've got practice in 30 minutes anyway. I'll be plenty warm once I start." When she still hesitated, he added with a gentle smile, "My grandmother would have my hide if she knew I left an elder standing in the rain." The mention of his grandmother somehow made it easier for Eleanor to accept. She allowed him to drape the oversized hoodie around her shoulders. It was still warm from his body heat, and despite being damp on the outside, it immediately cut the chill that had been settling into her bones. "I'm DeAndre. By the way," he said, still scrolling through his phone. "DeAndre Washington." "Eleanor Jenkins," she replied, adjusting the hoodie. "You're very kind, DeAndre." He looked up at the mention of his name and smiled, a bright, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Jenkins. Okay, so I've got some bad news and some good news about your bus." Eleanor braced herself. "Let's have the bad news first. I find it's best to get that out of the way." DeAndre nodded. "The bad news is they've temporarily canceled the number 16 route completely because of water main repairs on Maple Avenue. The good news is there's a shuttle bus running from Central Station that goes straight to the senior center." He frowned slightly, looking at his phone again. "But Central Station is about 12 blocks from here." Eleanor's heart sank. 12 blocks might as well be 12 miles in her condition, especially in this weather. "I see," she said quietly. DeAndre must have read the defeat in her expression because he quickly added, "But don't worry, I'll help you get there." Eleanor looked at the gym bag at his feet, then back up at his face. "But you said you have basketball practice?" DeAndre waved a hand dismissively. "Coach will understand. This is more important." He paused, considering their options. "We could try to catch a different bus to Central Station, or—" He hesitated, then seemed to make up his mind. "Or I could just walk with you to the senior center directly. It's maybe 20 blocks from here, but we can take it slow." "That's too much trouble," Eleanor protested. "I've already taken up enough of your time. Perhaps I should just call my daughter after all." "Is that what you want to do?" DeAndre asked, no judgment in his voice. Eleanor thought about it. Calling Lisa meant admitting she couldn't manage on her own anymore. It meant confirming all of Lisa's concerns about her independence. And it meant interrupting her daughter's workday for something that shouldn't have been a crisis in the first place. "No," Eleanor decided. "I'd rather not worry her if I can help it. But I also don't want you to miss your practice. Sports are important for college applications, aren't they?" DeAndre's eyebrows rose slightly, impressed by her knowledge. "They can be, yeah. But I'm not worried about missing one practice." He checked the time on his phone. "Tell you what, let's try for the shuttle. If we can catch the number 8 bus at the next block, it'll take us straight to Central Station. From there, it's an easy connection to the senior center." Eleanor nodded, feeling a renewed sense of hope. "That sounds like a good plan." DeAndre picked up his bag, slinging both over one shoulder, then offered his free arm to Eleanor. She hesitated only briefly before accepting it, grateful for the support. His arm was solid and steady under her hand. As they began walking toward the number 8 stop, the rain started to ease, as if the weather itself approved of this new arrangement. DeAndre adjusted his pace to match hers, never showing impatience when she needed to step carefully around puddles or take a moment to rest. "So, Mrs. Jenkins, you go to the senior center often?" he asked. "Every Thursday," she replied. "My friend Mabel and I play canasta." "We've been doing it for years. Canasta," DeAndre repeated. "My grandma plays that too. She tried to teach me once, but I could never keep all the rules straight." Eleanor laughed softly. "It does take some getting used to. Do you live with your grandmother?" DeAndre shook his head. "Not anymore. She raised me until I was 12, then my mom got back on her feet and I moved in with her. But I still go see Grandma every weekend. She's only a few blocks from our apartment." As they walked, Eleanor found herself sharing more than she'd intended. She told DeAndre about Harold, about their 50 years of marriage before cancer took him, about her daughter Lisa, who worked at the community college and worried too much. In turn, DeAndre told her about his plans after graduation. He hoped for a basketball scholarship, but was also applying for engineering programs at state schools. "My math teacher says I've got a good shot at some scholarships," he explained as they reached the bus stop. "Basketball would be amazing, but I need a backup plan. My mom always says, hope for the best but prepare for more than one best." Eleanor smiled at the saying. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is," DeAndre agreed with obvious pride. "Works 2 jobs to keep us going. My little brother and sister think she's basically a superhero, and they're not wrong." They waited only 5 minutes before the number 8 bus arrived. DeAndre helped Eleanor board, handling her fare card when her fingers proved too stiff from the cold to manage it. The bus was crowded, but a middle-aged woman immediately stood up when she saw Eleanor. "Please, take my seat," she offered. Eleanor thanked her and sat down gratefully, while DeAndre stood beside her, holding onto the overhead rail. The warmth of the bus began to thaw Eleanor's chilled limbs, and she realized just how cold she had become standing out in the rain for so long. "Are you feeling any warmer?" DeAndre asked, looking down at her with concern. "Much better. Thank you," she assured him, though her hand still trembled slightly. The bus journey took about 15 minutes, during which Eleanor noticed several passengers glancing curiously at the unlikely pair they made. An elderly white woman and a young black teenager in a basketball jersey, chatting like old friends. She wondered briefly what they must think, then decided it didn't matter one bit. At Central Station, DeAndre once again offered his arm as they navigated the busy terminal. He seemed to know exactly where they needed to go, guiding Eleanor confidently through the crowd to a small waiting area marked Special Services. "The shuttle to the senior center leaves from here," he explained. "It runs every 30 minutes. Looks like we've got about 10 minutes until the next one." Eleanor settled onto a bench, feeling the day's stress and exertion catching up with her. DeAndre sat beside her, setting his bags at his feet. "You know," she said after a moment, "I keep thinking about all those people who walked past me today. Not one of them stopped until you came along." DeAndre shrugged. "People get caught up in their own stuff. They stop seeing what's right in front of them." "But you saw me," Eleanor pointed out. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "My grandma always told me to pay attention to the world around me. She said life puts people in your path for a reason, and it's up to you to figure out what that reason might be." He smiled slightly. "Besides, you reminded me of her standing there in the rain. I couldn't just walk by." Eleanor felt a lump form in her throat. "Well, I'm very grateful you didn't." The shuttle arrived right on schedule. As they boarded, Eleanor was struck by how differently she felt now compared to an hour ago. The fear and helplessness had been replaced by something warmer, a renewed faith in human connection. The senior center was only a short ride away. As the shuttle pulled up to the entrance, Eleanor could see through the windows that the place was still busy with activity. Mabel would be inside, probably wondering what had happened to her. DeAndre helped Eleanor down from the shuttle, then glanced at his watch. "I might still be able to catch the second half of practice if I hurry." "You should go," Eleanor said firmly. "You've done more than enough." But DeAndre shook his head. "Let me just see you inside first. Make sure you get warmed up properly." Eleanor didn't have the heart to refuse him. They walked together through the sliding glass doors of the center, where the bright lights and warmth immediately enveloped them. Several heads turned as they entered, and Eleanor spotted Mabel at their usual table, cards already laid out. "Eleanor Jenkins. I was about to call the police," Mabel exclaimed, hurrying over as quickly as her walker would allow. "What on earth happened to you? And who is this young man?" Eleanor smiled, patting DeAndre's arm still linked with hers. "This is DeAndre Washington," she said, her voice filled with a pride she couldn't quite explain. "And believe me, Mabel, I have quite a story to tell you today." The senior center buzzed with activity as Eleanor introduced DeAndre to her friend Mabel. Several of the other seniors looked up from their card games and puzzles, curious about the tall teenager in basketball gear standing beside their friend. "So you just happened to find Eleanor in the rain?" Mabel asked, eyeing DeAndre with a mixture of gratitude and lingering suspicion. At 78, Mabel had seen enough of the world to be cautious, especially when it came to strangers offering help. "Yes, ma'am," DeAndre replied politely. She was trying to find the bus, but nobody was stopping to help. Eleanor still wore DeAndre's hoodie around her shoulders. She pulled it closer, suddenly protective of the young man. "Mabel, he missed his basketball practice to help me. Walked me all the way here through the rain." Something in Eleanor's tone made Mabel soften. She reached out and patted DeAndre's arm. "Well, then I owe you thanks for looking after my friend. Not many young folks would bother these days." DeAndre shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what anybody should do." "But that's just it," Eleanor said quietly. "Nobody else did." A staff member approached with a cup of hot tea for Eleanor, noticing her damp clothes. "Mrs. Jenkins, you're soaked. Let me find you something dry to wear. I think we still have those emergency clothes in the back." While the staff member disappeared to find dry clothes, DeAndre glanced at his watch. "I should probably get going. Coach is going to wonder where I disappeared to." Eleanor felt a surprising pang of sadness at the thought of him leaving. "Of course. You've done more than enough." She began to remove his hoodie, but he shook his head. "Keep it for now. It's still raining out there." He hesitated, then added, "Actually, do you mind if I use your phone to call my coach? My phone battery just died." He held up his phone, showing the black screen. "Of course," Mabel said, pulling an old flip phone from her purse. "Though I don't know if young people remember how to use these dinosaurs." DeAndre smiled. "My grandma has one just like it." He dialed a number and stepped a few feet away to make the call. Eleanor watched him, struck by how at ease he seemed among the elderly people around him. Most teenagers she encountered seemed awkward or impatient around seniors, but DeAndre spoke to his coach with respect and then returned the phone to Mabel with a thank you. "Everything okay with your coach?" Eleanor asked. "Yeah, he's cool. Says I can make up the practice tomorrow morning." DeAndre picked up his gym bag. "So how will you get home later?" "The shuttle stops running at 6. Eleanor hadn't thought that far ahead. "I suppose I'll call my daughter to pick me up." "What time do you usually leave?" "Around 5, Eleanor replied. "After Mabel beats me at canasta a few times." DeAndre checked his watch again. "That's in about 2 hours. If you want, I could come back and help you get home. Make sure you don't get stuck again." Eleanor was touched by the offer but shook her head. "That's very kind, but I can't ask you to do that. You've already given up your practice for me." "It's no trouble," DeAndre insisted. "I live over on West Side anyway. It's on my road home." When Eleanor still hesitated, he added, "Consider it a rain check, literally." Mabel chuckled at the pun. "I like this young man, Eleanor. Smart and funny." Eleanor found herself smiling too. "Well, if you're sure it's not too much trouble." "It's settled then," DeAndre said. "I'll swing back by at 5. Maybe I can get some homework done at the library next door until then." Before Eleanor could respond, the staff member returned with a set of dry clothes, a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt with the senior center logo. "Here you go, Mrs. Jenkins. You can change in the restroom. We can't have you catching pneumonia." As Eleanor took the clothes, she turned to thank DeAndre once more, but he was already heading toward the door, giving her a small wave. "See you at 5, Mrs. Jenkins." Eleanor watched him go, still slightly amazed at how her awful day had turned around because of one person's kindness. Mabel nudged her friend. "Go change, then come tell me all about your adventure. And don't leave out a single detail about that nice young man." After changing into the dry clothes, Eleanor joined Mabel at their usual table. Their card game soon gave way to conversation as Eleanor recounted her experience, the fear and frustration of being ignored by dozens of people, and then the unexpected relief when DeAndre stopped to help. "You know what struck me the most?" Eleanor said, warming her hands around her second cup of tea. "He acted like it was the most natural thing in the world to help a stranger. Like he couldn't imagine just walking past." Mabel nodded thoughtfully. "His grandmother raised him right. You can always tell. He said something about life putting people in your path for a reason, Eleanor continued. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? The next 2 hours passed quickly. Despite the rough start, Eleanor found herself enjoying the afternoon as she always did. The comfortable routine of their card game, the familiar faces around them, the gentle banter with Mabel, it all felt even more precious after the day's events. At 5 o'clock sharp, Eleanor looked up to see DeAndre entering the center, right on time as promised. He'd changed into dry clothes himself, jeans and a different sweatshirt, and carried a backpack instead of his gym bag. Ready to go, Mrs. Jenkins? He asked, approaching their table. Eleanor gathered her things, including her still damp coat and purse. All set. Thank you again for coming back. Mabel reached out to shake DeAndre's hand. You take good care of my friend, young man. And thank you for what you did today. DeAndre smiled. Yes, ma'am. It was nice meeting you. As they left the senior center together, Eleanor noticed that the rain had stopped, though the sidewalks were still wet, and the evening air had a crisp chill. DeAndre walked beside her, matching his pace to hers just as he had done earlier. How was your homework? Eleanor asked. Got most of it done. Had a calculus problem that was giving me trouble, though. Calculus, Eleanor repeated, impressed. That's advanced for high school, isn't it? DeAndre nodded. I'm in the accelerated math program, hoping it'll help with scholarship applications. What kind of engineering are you interested in? Eleanor asked, remembering their earlier conversation. Civil engineering, I think. I like the idea of building things that help communities, bridges, roads, water systems. Things people use every day but don't think about until they're not working right. He gestured at the construction site they were passing, like when they have to tear up streets to fix pipes. Eleanor smiled at the reference to what had started her troubles that day. Well, if you design better systems, perhaps fewer old ladies will get lost in the future. DeAndre laughed. I'll make that my mission statement. They continued walking with DeAndre guiding them toward the bus stop that would take Eleanor home. As they waited for the bus, Eleanor found herself wondering about this young man's life, his hopes, his challenges, his everyday reality that was likely so different from her own. DeAndre, she said carefully, I hope this isn't too personal, but I've been thinking about something. All those people who passed by me today, do you think it was because I'm old? Or because they were just too busy with their own lives? DeAndre considered the question seriously. Probably a bit of both. People get tunnel vision in the city. They stop noticing things or people around them. He paused, then added, but yeah, being older probably made you easier to ignore. Society does that sometimes, makes certain people invisible. Eleanor nodded slowly. I think I understand that more than I used to. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued to wait. When the bus finally arrived, DeAndre helped Eleanor board, then sat beside her for the journey. As the bus made its way through the evening traffic, Eleanor found herself sharing stories about her teaching days, about the changes she'd seen in the city over 8 decades, about her late husband Harold and their life together. DeAndre listened attentively, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. In turn, he told her about his family, his mother who worked as a nurse's aide during the day and a hotel housekeeper on weekends, his younger siblings who he often looked after in the evenings, his grandmother who had taught him to cook and to see people properly, as he put it. What do you mean by see people properly? Eleanor asked. To look at folks and really see them, DeAndre explained. Not just what they look like on the outside, but who they might be underneath. Grandma always said everybody's carrying something heavy, even if you can't see it. So you should give people the benefit of the doubt and offer help when you can. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman, Eleanor said. DeAndre smiled proudly. She is. I'd like you to meet her someday. You'd get along great. The casual invitation surprised Eleanor. She hadn't expected their connection to extend beyond this one day, but found herself warming to the idea. I'd like that very much. When the bus reached Eleanor's stop, DeAndre helped her down the steps and walked her the short distance to her small house. The porch light was already on. Lisa must have stopped by and turned it on, knowing her mother would be coming home after dark. This is me, Eleanor said, gesturing to the modest one-story home. Thank you for seeing me all the way here. You really didn't have to. Wanted to make sure you got home safe, DeAndre replied. He hesitated, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I wrote down my phone number. in case you ever need help again. Or, just want to talk sometime. Eleanor took the paper, deeply touched by the gesture. That's very thoughtful of you. You should probably have this back too, DeAndre said, reaching for his hoodie that Eleanor was still wearing. Oh, I completely forgot I was wearing it. She quickly removed it and handed it to him. Thank you for lending it to me. As DeAndre took the hoodie, Eleanor impulsively reached out and gave his arm a gentle squeeze. You're a good person, DeAndre Washington. Your grandmother should be very proud. He ducked his head slightly, seemingly embarrassed by the praise. It was really nice meeting you, Mrs. Jenkins. Get some rest, okay? Today was pretty rough on you. I will, she promised. You take care getting home. Eleanor watched as DeAndre walked back toward the bus stop, his tall figure gradually disappearing in the gathering dusk. Only when he was out of sight did she turn to unlock her front door, the piece of paper with his phone number held carefully in her hand. Inside, she found a note from Lisa on the kitchen table. Stopped by to check on you. Call me when you get home. Love, Lisa. Eleanor set the paper with DeAndre's number next to her daughter's note, struck by the contrast between them, one representing her past and present, the other a surprising new connection that had appeared out of nowhere. As she reached for the phone to call Lisa, Eleanor wondered what her daughter would make of today's adventure. And for the first time since Harold's passing, Eleanor felt a sense of possibility, a feeling that life might still have unexpected turns ahead, even at 82. Lisa Jenkins pulled into her mother's driveway just after 9 the next morning, carrying a bag of fresh bagels and coffee. She'd been worried ever since their phone conversation the night before. Her mother had assured her everything was fine, but Lisa had detected something different in Eleanor's voice, a kind of excitement that seemed unusual after what should have been a stressful day. As Lisa let herself in with her spare key, she called out, "Mom, it's me. I brought breakfast." She found Eleanor at the kitchen table, already dressed for the day in one of her neat blouse and cardigan combinations, her white hair styled in its usual soft waves. What wasn't usual was the notebook open in front of her and the phone sitting beside it. "Good morning, sweetheart." Eleanor greeted her daughter with a bright smile. "You didn't have to come by, I told you I was fine." Lisa set down the breakfast bag and studied her mother's face. "You sounded strange on the phone last night. Not upset exactly, but different." Eleanor laughed softly. "Different, yes. I suppose that's one way to put it." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down and I'll tell you all about yesterday." Over coffee and bagels, Eleanor recounted her experience, getting lost when her usual bus route had been changed, standing in the rain while dozens of people walked past, and finally being helped by a teenage boy who went out of his way to make sure she reached her destination safely. "He missed his basketball practice for me," Eleanor said, still sounding amazed by this fact. "Then he came back to the senior center to make sure I got home safely." Lisa frowned slightly. "A teenage boy just approached you on the street? Mom, you have to be careful about—" "Don't," Eleanor interrupted, her voice firm. "Don't turn this into something it wasn't. DeAndre was nothing but kind and respectful. He helped someone in need when no one else would." Lisa looked taken aback by her mother's sharpness. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest. It's just unusual these days for strangers to go out of their way like that." "Yes," Eleanor agreed, her expression softening. "That's precisely what made it so remarkable. He saw an old woman in trouble and decided to help, simple as that. He even gave me his phone number in case I needed assistance again." She pushed the small piece of paper across the table. Lisa picked it up, examining the neatly printed name and number. "DeAndre Washington." Lisa read aloud. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Eleanor shrugged. "He mentioned he's a senior at Central High. Plays basketball, but he's also in some advanced math program. Wants to be a civil engineer?" Lisa's eyes widened with sudden recognition. "Wait, tall boy, about 6 feet? Really good at math?" "Yes," Eleanor confirmed, surprised. "Do you know him?" "I think I do," Lisa said slowly. "If it's the same DeAndre Washington, he applied for one of our scholarship programs at the community college. I remember his application because it was one of the strongest we received, but he was just below our cutoff line." She shook her head in disbelief. "What are the odds?" Eleanor felt a strange flutter in her chest. He mentioned applying for scholarships. Said his math teacher thought he had a good chance. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "His academics are excellent, especially in STEM subjects. The committee was impressed, but we only had funding for so many students this year. She tapped the piece of paper with his number. And this is the young man who helped you yesterday? Yes, Eleanor replied. He gave up hours of his day for a complete stranger. She hesitated, then added, I'd like to do something for him, Lisa. To thank him properly. Lisa studied her mother's face. It had been a long time since she'd seen this kind of animation in Eleanor's expression. Since before her father's death, really. Whatever this chance encounter had stirred in her mother, it seemed to have awakened something that had been dormant for years. What did you have in mind? Lisa asked. I'm not sure yet, Eleanor admitted. But I've been thinking about it all morning. She gestured to the notebook in front of her, making a list of possibilities. Lisa reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. Tell you what, let me make a few calls on Monday. If it's the same DeAndre Washington, I might have an idea. For the rest of the weekend, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about her encounter with DeAndre. She found herself wondering how his weekend was going, whether he'd made it to his morning basketball practice, what his home life was like beyond the brief descriptions he'd shared. On Sunday evening, she picked up the phone and dialed his number before she could talk herself out of it. After 3 rings, a deep voice answered, Hello? DeAndre? It's Mrs. Jenkins from Thursday, the bus stop? Mrs. Jenkins! His voice immediately brightened. Hey, how are you doing? The genuine pleasure in his tone made Eleanor smile. I'm doing very well, thank you. I just wanted to call and thank you again for your help the other day, and to make sure you didn't get into any trouble with your coach. Nah, it was fine. Just had to run some extra laps the next morning, DeAndre said with a laugh. Totally worth it. Well, I was wondering. Eleanor hesitated, suddenly feeling nervous. My daughter Lisa works at the community college, and she's coming by for dinner tomorrow night. I thought perhaps you might like to join us, as a thank you for everything you did. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Dinner at your house? Yes, nothing fancy. Just a home-cooked meal. But I understand if you're busy with school and basketball. No, I'd like that, DeAndre cut in. I just didn't expect. That's really nice of you, Mrs. Jenkins. They arranged the details, 6:30 the next evening. And Eleanor hung up feeling both nervous and excited. It had been years since she'd had anyone but Lisa over for dinner. Harold had always been the social one in their marriage, the one who loved entertaining. Monday evening arrived, and Eleanor found herself fussing over details she normally wouldn't care about, setting the table with her good dishes, making sure the house was spotless, even putting fresh flowers in a vase for the center of the table. She'd spent the afternoon cooking one of Harold's old favorites, a pot roast with all the trimmings. Lisa arrived first, carrying a folder of papers along with a bottle of sparkling cider. Thought we should have something special to drink, she explained, setting it on the counter. What's in the folder? Eleanor asked, noticing how her daughter kept glancing at it. Just some information I want to share with both of you, Lisa replied cryptically. At exactly 6:30, the doorbell rang. Eleanor smoothed her hands over her dress, another thing she rarely bothered with these days, and went to answer it. DeAndre stood on the porch, looking slightly uncomfortable in khaki pants and a button-down shirt. His hair was freshly cut and he held a small potted plant in his hands. Good evening, Mrs. Jenkins, he said formally. My mom said I shouldn't come empty-handed, so he held out the plant. It's an African violet. The lady at the store said they're easy to take care of. Eleanor took the plant, touched by the gesture. It's beautiful, thank you. And please call me Eleanor. Come in, come in. As DeAndre entered the house, Lisa emerged from the kitchen. You must be DeAndre, she said, extending her hand. I'm Lisa, Eleanor's daughter. Thank you for helping my mother the other day. DeAndre shook her hand. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Please call me Lisa, she said with a warm smile. Any friend of Mom's doesn't need to ma'am me. Eleanor watched as her daughter and DeAndre exchanged pleasantries, struck by how easily they seemed to fall into conversation. There was none of the awkwardness she had feared, no uncomfortable silences or stilted small talk. By the time they sat down to dinner, it felt almost as if DeAndre was someone they had known for years. Over the meal, DeAndre shared more about himself, his hopes for college, his family's challenges with his mother working multiple jobs, his responsibility helping with his younger siblings. Eleanor and Lisa listened, occasionally asking questions, but mostly allowing him to talk. Your pot roast is amazing, Eleanor, DeAndre said, accepting a second helping. My grandma makes something like this, but I think yours might be even better. Eleanor felt herself flush with pleasure at the compliment. It was my husband's favorite. I don't make it often anymore, just for special occasions. As they finished eating, Lisa reached for the folder she had brought. DeAndre, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. She pulled out several papers and slid them across the table. I believe you applied for the STEM Scholars Program at the community college. DeAndre straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Back in January. I'm on the scholarship committee, Lisa explained. Your application was very impressive. 4.2 GPA, advanced placement in mathematics, glowing recommendations from your teachers. Unfortunately, we had limited funding this year. DeAndre nodded, his expression carefully neutral. I understand. It was a long shot anyway. However, Lisa continued, I've been authorized to inform you that there's been a change in circumstances. She pushed another paper toward him. One of our selected scholars has decided to attend a different college, which means we have an opening. If you're still interested, the scholarship is yours. DeAndre stared at the paper, his mouth slightly open. Are you serious? Completely serious, Lisa confirmed. Full tuition for 2 years, plus a stipend for books and supplies. Eleanor watched as DeAndre's composure briefly crumbled. He blinked rapidly, looking down at his plate. I don't know what to say, he managed finally, his voice thick with emotion. Say you'll accept, Eleanor urged gently. DeAndre looked up, his eyes shining. Of course I accept. This changes everything. He shook his head in disbelief. But why me? Wasn't there a waiting list or something? Lisa glanced at her mother, then back at DeAndre. There was. But the committee was impressed by your academic achievements and community involvement, and recent events confirmed that you possess the character and values that our program seeks to reward. Understanding dawned in DeAndre's eyes. You mean helping Eleanor? Lisa nodded. The scholarship isn't just about academic excellence. It's about identifying young people who will make positive contributions to their communities. Your actions the other day demonstrated exactly the kind of character we're looking for. DeAndre looked between the two women, his expression a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Eleanor said softly, when you stopped to help an old woman in the rain. After dinner, as Lisa and DeAndre discussed the details of the scholarship program, Eleanor sat back and watched them. There was something profoundly satisfying about seeing this connection unfold. A connection that would never have happened if not for a canceled bus route, a rainstorm, and one young man's decision to stop when everyone else walked by. Later, after DeAndre had left with the scholarship paperwork and promises to stay in touch, Lisa helped Eleanor clear the table. You orchestrated this, didn't you? Eleanor asked her daughter. The scholarship opening? Lisa smiled. Not entirely. There really was a student who declined, but there were others on the waiting list ahead of DeAndre. I just made a case to the committee that he deserved special consideration. She paused, then added, after meeting him tonight, I'm even more convinced we made the right choice. Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, Lisa, not just for DeAndre, but for understanding why this mattered to me. Lisa wrapped her arms around her mother. I haven't seen you this engaged, this alive in years, Mom. Whatever this connection is, it's good for you. As Eleanor prepared for bed that night, she placed the African violet on her bedside table next to the photo of Harold. You would have liked him, she told her husband's smiling face. A good boy with a bright future. For the first time in a very long time, Eleanor fell asleep thinking not of the past, but of possibilities that lay ahead. One chance encounter, one moment of kindness in a world that often seemed indifferent, and suddenly life had taken an unexpected turn. 6 months passed quickly. Spring turned to summer, and summer began its slow transition into fall. For Eleanor, these months had been unlike any others since Harold's passing. What had begun as a chance encounter on a rainy afternoon had blossomed into something neither she nor DeAndre could have predicted. It started with small things. DeAndre would stop by once a week to check on Eleanor, sometimes helping with tasks around the house that had become difficult for her, changing light bulbs, moving furniture for cleaning, fixing the loose step on the back porch. In return, Eleanor would cook for him, meals that reminded her of feeding her own family years ago. She enjoyed having someone to care for again, and DeAndre clearly appreciated home cooking after long days of school and basketball practice. Their Thursday routine became a fixture in both their lives. After DeAndre finished his classes, he would pick Eleanor up and drive her to the senior center in his mother's old car, a privilege he'd been granted specifically for this purpose. While Eleanor played cards with Mabel, DeAndre would study in the center's quiet room, occasionally joining the seniors for a game of checkers or helping with their technology questions. "That young man of yours is worth his weight in gold," Mabel told Eleanor one afternoon as they watched DeAndre patiently showing Mr. Abernathy how to video chat with his grandchildren. "Do you know he fixed my toaster last week? Wouldn't take a penny for it either." Eleanor felt a warm glow of pride, though she was quick to correct her friend. "He's not my young man, Mabel. He's his own person who happens to be kind enough to help an old woman now and then." But privately, Eleanor had begun to think of DeAndre as family. She kept track of his basketball games, celebrating his victories and commiserating over defeats. She listened to his concerns about college, offering whatever wisdom her years had given her. When his younger brother struggled with reading, Eleanor, a former elementary school teacher, offered to tutor him twice a week. Lisa noticed the change in her mother. "You're different these days," she commented during one of their Sunday dinners. "More energetic, more engaged." Eleanor considered this. "I suppose I am. Having someone to worry about besides myself, it gives me purpose again." "It's more than that," Lisa insisted. "You're not just helping DeAndre. This relationship is helping you too." It was true. Eleanor found herself looking forward to each day in a way she hadn't since Harold died. She had a reason to get up, to stay active, to care about the world around her. She started attending DeAndre's basketball games, sitting proudly in the stands next to his mother, Renee, who had initially been surprised by Eleanor's interest but had quickly welcomed her warmth and support. "I haven't had much help raising my kids," Renee confided one evening as they watched DeAndre score the winning basket. "Their dad left years ago and my mother does what she can, but she's getting older too. Having you take an interest in DeAndre, it means more than you know." Eleanor had reached over to squeeze Renee's hand. "He's a special young man. You've done an amazing job with him." As DeAndre's senior year progressed, Eleanor became involved in his college preparation process. She helped him draft essays for scholarship applications, proofread his personal statements, and even accompanied him and his mother to college tours when Renee couldn't get time off work. "You don't have to do all this," DeAndre told her after a particularly long day visiting a university 3 hours away. "I want to," Eleanor replied simply. "It makes me happy to see you working toward your dreams." When acceptance letters began arriving in the spring, Eleanor was among the first people DeAndre called. And when he received a full scholarship to the state, university's engineering program, supplementing the community college scholarship he'd already earned, her home was where the family gathered to celebrate. Now, as summer drew to a close, Eleanor sat in her living room surrounded by shopping bags and packing boxes. DeAndre would be leaving for college in just 2 weeks, and she had taken it upon herself to make sure he had everything he needed: bedding, towels, a desk lamp, a small coffee maker for late study nights. "Mom, don't you think you're going overboard?" Lisa asked, surveying the collection of items. "The dorm rooms aren't that big, you know."